we are now broadcasting. So we'll give it a minute so that people can come on in. But
the crowds are gathering.
Yes, exactly. But I will say, you know, what's interesting is these, number one, are so much fun. I think that the time, people's sense of time is so discombobulated right now that we probably have more views afterwards than we do during. But that's
I mean, I don't even know what day it is most of the time, which is
exactly
lovely. But
that's right. No, exactly. That's all right. We have a couple folks who have joined so far. Good news. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. It's hard to know what day it is or what's going on and what's happening. But let's pull this down here.
Well, this will unfold over quite a long time, I believe. So.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. No, that's right. And it is really fun, I think, to be able to have a way to bring people in and talk about writing and reading and.
Oh, it's cool. And actually, reading, I was really wondering if, because bookstores are closed and a lot of tension in the air and people reading a lot of news, I was worried people weren't reading books as much, particularly fiction. And I talked to my agent the other day and he said fiction reading is up, even more than nonfiction.
Wow.
Nonfiction, but yeah, kind of escapist, you know.
Yeah.
Who needs more problems? So.
I'm with you. I mean, I think one of the blessings of this time, at least for me, has been saying, hey, I'm going to read some of these books that I have said, hey, this doesn't feed into my work exactly, or I don't have time for this right now. And it's been great. I think I highly recommend it to everybody. Everyone's going to catch up on your books and be ready for your next one. And that's
right.
That's good. That's very good.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. How is as we'll give it one more minute or so and then we can go ahead and get started. But because people will be coming in and because we've got a couple already, how is your next book coming?
Well, that has been a very big plus of the shutdown. I've finished the whole new 12th draft.
Wow.
Of the book that was supposed to be turned in quite a while ago. So now I'm gonna, gotta go back and do the grooming where you rake everything out. But for me, the plotting is the difficult part. Sure. So I am over that hurdle. And it's interesting, in writing a book, I often don't really know what the pivot points and who the characters are until it's done. So.
Interesting. Oh, it's very interesting, actually. Okay, so you don't write it all out and then write it.
Oh, I do map it all out, and then by the end, it bears no resemblance at all. So, anyway, it takes.
That's a great pre-chat. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, we'll go ahead and get officially started, which is just to say welcome to Friends of the Winthrop Library virtual author chat. We're really lucky today because Carol Cassella is with us, and Carol has a place here and has for a very, very long time. And she's going to be talking about her book Healer, which is actually set in the Valley, technically, or we'll talk more about the location and how she developed that. But we are doing these virtual chats because we miss each other and we miss talking about reading and writing, and also to try to find a way to advance the mission of the library in a time where it's very difficult to do that because everything has still been closed. It's also a great chance to say that we're still working aggressively towards a new library and hopefully breaking ground next month. We will be continuing fundraising well into the construction, probably all the way through. So there is, as I like to say, no donation too big or too small. So whatever end you tend towards or somewhere in the middle is all welcome, but it's just wonderful to have the community really be a part of it. And if that's tough for you right now, that's completely fine because we're going to keep working towards it for you anyway. So so Carol, welcome and thank you for being here.
Oh my, I would do anything for the Valley and anything for the library. So
wonderful.
There you go.
Well, maybe start out by telling us a little bit about the time that the amount of time that you and your family spend here and have spent here and how that's been part of your history, and then we'll get into your reading.
Yeah, sure. Well, and some of it is mirrored in the book. Although the book is not actually in the Methow Valley in Winthrop, you will see some parallels as you read the book, if you read the book. But we found our land after looking for truly years. Our kids had nosebleeds, read Harry Potter, basically grew up in the real car. So we finally found our land, and it had no house on it. It had no infrastructure really. So we tent camped, and then we bought this little tiny trailer, and we had 4 kids and a Bernese mountain dog living in the trailer. And then my husband built the house. So 16 years in, it's almost done. Can anyone ever say that? Kids are long grown and off, you know, in their own jobs, but it's nice to be living in more than one room of the house now. So, but it's, you know, I mean, my roots are here as much as any place else. It's where I see my future home. It's more than a vacation home, for sure. It's not a second home.
Right. No, it's definitely, having had the chance to be at your home, it's a beautiful space, and I know that you spend as much time as you possibly can there. What you may or may not have inferred about Carol from reading about Healer is that she is also a physician. She's also the mother of 2 sets of twins, not 1 set, but 2 sets, which I believe arrived within 12 months of each other. Is that right, give or take?
16 months, yeah.
Well, it's the same thing, right? So if there's a superwoman here, you are definitely it, for sure. But I love that you're both a physician and a writer, and you have 3 novels, and you're working on a 4th, and all of them would commend to you. I know we did an event at the Red Barn a little while ago, and one of the people who was an early donor to the library said, "Oh my goodness, where's Carol? I know her books," and it was so great to have Rita run up to you and and remember Gemini, I think in particular. So
yeah, that's sweet. It means a lot to hear that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, yes, I know it's important. Well, our ED Jill is on the line, and she has 1 set of twins, and she says she bows down to you, as do all of us. So there you go.
I just gave mine half the attention that you did, Jill. So
there you go. Perfect. Awesome. Well, why don't we go, if you want to go ahead and maybe do a short reading, and then we can have everybody ask questions and hear a little bit about what it is that you're reading. That would be great.
Yeah, and this is primarily the opening and the sort of setting, establishing the setting here. It's about 10 minutes, hopefully not too long to drive people crazy. But the setting of the book is not only somewhere in Okanagan County, similar to this area, but it's in the Great Recession. And so it's about a family, Addison, husband Claire, and their daughter Jory, who were in a biotech. He was in a biotech firm that went broke. So they went from living very well on the west side to moving here because they owned a farm that they were restoring a house. They lost their home in Seattle. And she is a doctor, but she's not practiced in 14 years for various reasons, one of which was a problem that occurred with a patient. So we will start with a brief opening that kind of sets the medical part and then move on. The body is a miracle, the way it heals, a factory of survival and self-repair. As soon as flesh is cut, cells spontaneously begin to divide and knit themselves into a protective scar. A million new organic bonds bridge the broken space with no judgment passed on the method of injury. In her residency, Claire had treated a trauma patient who felt only one quick tug, looked down at her severed hand, and wondered to whom on earth it might belong. Even pain can be stunned into silence by the imperative to live. As many years as it had been, Claire still understands the human body. She understands the involuntary mechanics of healing, but how an injured marriage heals, that remains a mystery. There are 3 medical clinics in Huffman Valley and 1 hospital capable of minor orthopedics, low-risk deliveries, appendectomies, and a rare exploratory laparotomy if the weather is too bad to get to a city. A 90-minute drive gets you to Wenatchee, where almost any medical or surgical problem can be patched up. There are plenty of opportunities for a doctor to work. She tells herself this again, much as she did 20 years ago. Economies may rise and fall, wars can be won or lost, ruling powers conquer and be conquered in turn, and people will still need doctors. The size of the city shouldn't matter. Health should be an equalizer for all human beings. Claire had used this consolation to justify taking out her medical school loans, using it to fortify herself in the middle of the night when she groped for something stable and safe in the scary liminal zone of young adulthood, while her mother railed on her to figure out a way to support herself. She would train herself in the art of healing because no one could take that away from her. Security she could pack and carry in the protected space of her mind forever. So it had seemed, at least, when she was young and did not understand that one bad decision made in the middle of the night could leach away even the most fervent self-confidence. The Sunrise Bakery is 10 miles from their land, 8 down small county roads and 2 more down the highway, almost as quiet as the back roads at this time of year. She parks the Audi in a pond of muddy slush, grips the door rim and pivots on the thin leather sole of a single pointed toe in order to plant one shoe on solid ground, soaking the other foot in a grimy melt of plowed snow. It's a small place, 6 tables and a single booth, a big window lined with loose panes that rattle at every gust of wind. She waits for her coffee and looks around the room. A few retired couples reading the newspaper, 2 women in fleece vests talking in the corner, their hats still snug down over their ears. One of them glances at her shoes and bites back a smile. Claire smiles at her and pays for the coffee. Then she steps through the slush again and drives home, changes into black jeans and snow boots, and drives across the mountain pass to the hospital. Hallam had nearly turned into a ghost town 3 decades ago, shrinking with every graduating batch of offspring. Mining and timbering and farming had all played out, and the few made rich had moved on. Then Reaganomics had seemed to manifest, and the golden spout of technology trickled money down in buckets, in tubs, in pools, in lakes. Hallam survived by cultivating 2 classes, the servers and the served, both sliding along the Teflon interface of tourist dollars. 30-year-olds dressed in REI vests and biking shorts bought second and third homes, and then flat out retired in search of the raw Northwest. They paved Issaquah and North Bend and Clay Elum and kept on, drove east in hybrid SUVs all the way across the Cascades to Methow Valley, land the planet seemed to have held in waiting until superfluous income could inflate its only dependable commodity, breathtaking natural beauty. Stock options and IPOs were converted to 5-bedroom long homes and solar panels and gasoline generators. And so the town survived, flush and crowded on holidays and in summertime, sparse and quiet the rest of the year. Shops opened along the 3-block Main Street, tractor dealers converted to mountain bike sales, feed stores put in stainless shelves stocked with whole wheat pasta and imported olive oils. Even the Sunrise bought a Gaggia espresso machine and hired a barista. In a town where the split between the haves and the have-nots was once measured by the rust on a pickup, a new paradigm of normal had settled like invisible gas. Now the split fell between those with more money than a man could fathom and those who didn't. Caught in the middle were the people who sold their dirt-dry farms with those breathtaking views, or their family-owned businesses that catered to ranchers and orchardists, and then sat and watched as prices rose and rents rose and their money ran out. Claire and Addison had bought their house here a few years after Addison sold his first biotech company, Eugenia. Their friends all had second homes. It seemed almost logical to invest in the place they loved vacationing, but she'd never considered how it would feel to have a Hallam P.O. box be her sole address. It colors her view of the small town as she drives through, as if the skin of it had been turned inside out. The simplicity of the clapboard-sided buildings, the wood rail fences, the absence of stoplights and neon and malls, all of it felt more punitive than peaceful when it came without a choice. The road follows the river, black as oil where it slides between its frozen banks, a contest between cold progress and solid ice. Small brown birds hover and light on straws of aspen chewed raw by the deer. A few horses stand inside a muddy pen, each with a rear fetlock cocked and ears low against the heads, as if they are resigned to be annoyed by the sharp wind all winter long. She thinks about Addison. She pictures him in some Hilton or Fairmont in his silk and cashmere Barney suits, getting ready for drinks and dinner while she runs the tank nearly empty in hopes of finding a cheaper gas station further down the road. It's almost funny that he'd made millions discovering a simple way to diagnose a deadly disease, ovarian cancer, a fortune built on bad news, and then all of it lost on the precipice of a cure. Ironic enough to be almost funny. They had looked for property in the Okanagan area for more than 2 years, driven over 1,000 square miles east of the Cascades. Addison seemed to have some particular vision in mind, a cutout that necessitated an exact fit, a missing piece for his entree into the privileged world. He wanted something bold, the seed for a family dynasty. Claire teased that he'd watched too many episodes of Dallas as a kid. But at least once a month, they drove over the mountain passes to wind through the valleys and along the rivers that fed the Columbia. The house they had found had been built at least 90 years ago, directly over a burned-down homestead cabin, one of the first in the region. In its time, it must have been quite the showcase, with indoor plumbing and a second story sunk into a broad sweep of Idaho fescue. The original vegetable garden had long ago wasted to a scar of Barnaby and mustard tumbleweed that delineated the plowed rectangle as clearly as any deer fence. This land was so different from the rainy west side of the Cascades, with barely enough water to scrape by. The native bunch grasses reliably succumbed to opportunistic weeds any place the soil was disturbed. An apple orchard had been planted in an atypical era of heavier rains, and the trees, long gone to ruin, watched over the house like an audience of craggy old men. Jory said they looked like the wickedly enchanted trees in The Wizard of Oz, ready to throw rotting apples at these invading city folk. The house had seemed familiar to Claire somehow. From the very first time they bumped down the winding, overgrown driveway, the cracked windows, the knob and tube wiring, the peeling wood siding. The very fact that it had lain untouched for so many decades conjured for her both the possibility and reminiscence. She had walked through the chilly rooms trying to imagine the family that had built this home, the Blackstocks, back when the land could be had for nothing. Imagined how hard they must have worked those fields until too many years of drought forced down the harsh truths about dryland farming. The ranch had been leased for cattle grazing after that, but the realtor had no record of anyone else inhabiting the house. Claire wondered if there had been children, more than one, whether it was purely the shifting of climate and crop that drove them out, or if divorce or disease or death had emptied the house. It felt important somehow to believe that it had been abandoned because the settlers had moved on to good and hopeful things, that the bones and dust here remembered more joy than capitulation. I can't hear you now.
There we go. That was beautiful.
Is it your fault?
Sorry about that. Usually a little bit more on top of it. Wow, that was beautiful. And it does immediately feel familiar in the thoughts and the description. Just really lovely.
Well, and of course, one of the things the book is doing is contrasting the wealth in her prior life with what she finds here. So anything that sounds disparaging is not my actual feeling.
No, well, I like your comment that it, or as you read, where you say it's a different thing when it's a matter of choice, right? Is an important piece of understanding also how we live here, I think, and how many live here in different ways. So it's
and true very much, I think, of the Great Recession. Many people in unexpected places that did not feel comfortable at the time.
Absolutely. And that is actually a great, great entree, is because you've placed this during the Great Recession, and there are people that are saying that it's possible that we are heading into something that might be similar. What are some of the parallels that you see? And would they be mostly economic, or would you see other parallels similarly?
Yeah, I see parallels that arise from the economics and also from the health scares. But one of the main ones that I see happening and I fear is going to continue unrolling is an increase in the disparities that are already increasing in our society. The economic pain of the lockdown compared to the personal and emotional pain of losing people we love, and the truth that many people who have fewer resources, less access to health care, jobs that don't have any sort of, severance or savings behind them, they're going to fare much worse, And some of us have the luxury of at least periodically lifting our head to say, well, we get more time with our family. Well, we get more time to write. But the majority of people do not have that luxury. So, and then of course, I also think that like the Great Recession, it pulls people together. As a community, as a nation, we have proven to be really strong through stuff like this. So.
Right. No, that's a great reminder and a good foreshadowing too. So that's great. So you set your novel in a town that you named Hallam, which maybe has some similarities to where we're making this recording. But how did you choose your locale, and how did you think about that?
Well, I love it here so much. I just love it. I love the landscape. I love the people, the tightness of the community, the different approach to life. It's such a contrast. I mean, I am not Claire. I don't live the way she lived on the West Side, but it's such a contrast to that part of New Wealth that has occurred. And I just, can I say it makes my heart sing? But I wanted to set a novel here.
Yeah.
And it worked well for some of the themes I was also exploring, which are social disparities, different layers of society. And in this book, there's the layer that has been here for generations, the layer of those of us who have come over and established second homes and, provide a major piece of the economic base here now, but at the same time have greatly changed the nature of the valley.
Yeah.
And then one of the other main characters is an immigrant who works in the orchards. And so I was kind of looking at how these three different socioeconomic levels work and live together.
Wow. And that is just so perfect for the time that we're in too, is these ideas are coming up to the surface, and people I think are even more aware maybe than they were. So I know, yeah, everyone is going to be rushing to Trails End book to get your book after this if they don't have it already, for sure.
Trails End, it's just a fantastic story. I love it, and love independent bookstores. But like the library, it's these, and like all our shops in town here, I'm trying to do occasional takeout, even though I'm really isolated. But those are the things that make this community unique, and that help keep it alive. And so Trails End is one of them. Glad people.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. Well, so you and I both share being English majors from Duke, which I love. Yeah. How did you, and I don't even know if I know this already, but how did you go from an English major to med school? Were you pre-med also?
No, I actually had to go back to get my pre-med courses after I graduated. Well, I graduated from English literature thinking I would be a writer. And then shock among shocks, I realized, you can't support yourself as a fiction writer. So I was volunteering in a crisis clinic, and I got really interested in maybe going into psychology, social work or psychology. And then as I explored more, I realized it would be easier to be a psychiatrist than the path of getting into school as opposed to getting a PhD in psychology. Okay. So I went back and did my pre-med classes thinking I would be a psychiatrist, which I'm not. I'm an anesthesiologist. but started in internal medicine. And it was one of my first clinical rotations in med school. One of my patients had lupus, and she had neurologic manifestations, a lupus psychosis. And I could watch her mental status change along with her laboratory values as her disease waxed and waned. And I just was fascinated by this mix of the mind and the body. Wow. And exactly kind of what writers do. We're exploring the mind, we're exploring people. And I see a lot of overlaps actually between medicine and writing. So in some ways, you know, as a doctor, I don't always get the time that I want with patients, and writing lets you do that. Writing lets you dive into the life of a patient that you don't get to know in fact. So,
right.
Yeah.
So as you were practicing, were you also always thinking about stories and
yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you still practice, right? And you still write. So I guess that makes sense.
But I do have a hard time. But I mean, you must know this. It's, if you want to be a writer, it never goes away. It never goes away. It eats at you. And it was really when my kids were starting back, going for the first time to school, and I had been working part-time to be with them. And relatively, I had these blocks of free time, 6 hours a day, twice a week. And I was still just eating at myself about the desire to write. And one day I just decided, you know what? I'm going to either do it or I'm going to shut up. I'm just going to be happy reading because I cannot stand this internal battle. So, you know, led on from there.
Well, and I realized that I was so excited to get into this conversation with you that I completely skipped over your proper bio. But you should know that there are, her other books are Gemini, obviously Healer is what you read from today, and then Oxygen, and they're all published by Simon & Schuster, translated into multiple languages and have multiple awards. So you really, everybody should absolutely go pick them up and read them without question. So. But one of the, I apologize for jumping over that, Carol, but
no problem.
I assumed what I knew, everybody else must know. That's great.
Talk about the library if you wanted to, but go ahead.
No, that's great. Well, and one of the things that that you write about, and this makes sense with your careers, plural, is looking at the relationships between physicians and patients and how those interactions can drive the story. So I imagine that that's a pretty complicated relationship. And where did you find the ideas for those pivots? Is it from the experience that you had practicing, or is it other things that you observed or things that you worried about, or how did those come about?
Yeah, primarily experiences with my own patients. None of my books actually mirror an event that occurred with a patient, a complication or anything like that. But as I touched on earlier, you have so little time with a patient, and their psychological state is very important, but they're there to see you about a specific problem, and they want you to focus on that, with nuance in between, I think. But I think a lot about their psychological state after I go home, or between their visits when I was an internist, or before I take them into the operating room now, because I think it plays a huge part in their illness. And in anesthesia, I think it plays a big part in how their anesthetic will go, how they will wake up, how they will feel about trusting their surgeon, trusting their anesthesiologist, maybe even healing if I get a little bit, I don't know, a little bit woo-woo about it. But so I play those out in my head, and those come out in fiction. The first book, Oxygen, is about an anesthesiology who has a tragedy occur on the operating room table, and how that affects her and the family of this child, and kind of reveals some things about our medical system. And that was born of the worry that every anesthesiologist has at the head of the table when they are taking care of you. We are always thinking about what could go wrong. How can I make sure it doesn't go wrong? So.
Right. I can only imagine. Having trusted myself to you all more time than I would like, I'm very grateful for how good you are at your jobs.
Well, trust.
But that is, I mean, there's so much that goes on mentally, and to be able to put that, to be able to capture that, both with the context of a specific character, but also those are pretty intense moments to be able to write about.
Yeah, yeah. And I find that bit of distance actually helps me process it some more. Plus, I really, really love language. I love what language can do. I like the rhythm of it, the pace of it, the sound of words together, the descriptors of things you can see and the things you cannot see. And so, you know, to be able to link that to my medical work is really, it's truly a joy once I get over the plotting.
Well, I love hearing, and for those who came in a little bit later, as we were waiting for everybody to come in, we talked a little bit about your Carol's process, and she said she starts out with a plan, and then everything changes. Is that right?
Completely.
In the military, we always said that a plan never survives first contact. So I think there's many applications, right?
Flexibility is important in life.
That's right. Well, are you able to tell us anything about what you're working on now, or is that, do you have any suspicions around that, or?
Yeah, no, well, it's still going to be a while before anybody can read it, but the editor still has the opportunity to reject it. Yeah, it was born along the lines of plot. It was born of a desire to write about vaccines and the difference between a more developed country like ours with access to vaccines and our freedom to view those in various ways, and then developing countries where it's more a lack of money and hundreds of thousands of children in particular die of vaccine preventable diseases. So I was interested in looking at that, and I was looking at polio, and as I delved into it and tried to find a population with polio outbreaks, I decided that the best setting in 2015 was the Syrian war. Through researching that, I actually met a Syrian refugee, and we've developed a good friendship since then. She lived in Jordan. I met her there. And now the story is really about our relationship. And so it's quite different. There are almost no vaccines. There really are no vaccines.
Well, I can't wait to read that. And that sounds absolutely amazing, actually. And again, so pertinent, right?
Yeah. It's been a difficult book in ways because it bears so much relationship to the truth.
Yes.
So.
Yes, right. And I guess that's always the goal of the writing, isn't it? To get to the hardest truths.
Yeah.
Sometimes you tell in other ways, and yeah. So one last quick question, and is how you think about, and I love this in the previous suggestions here, but how, if at all, you think about healthcare and libraries in any kind of similar way?
Very much, I do. I mean, it may sound, well, first of all, a library is filled with books, and medical practice is filled with patients who are even more complicated than books. And you have to open them to find out what's inside. But the thing that I really cherish about libraries in this country is that it is an institution that we provide as a nation to everyone for free, no matter where you come from, no matter what your family home is like, whether it has a lot of books or no books. And it can make a huge difference in people's lives, as Nancy Pearl said last week. And healthcare, I definitely believe, sincerely believe, needs to do the same. We need to offer healthcare to everyone equally, regardless of the money they have, the education they have, because I see those as equally necessary services. So, and particularly a community like Winthrop, the whole Methow Valley, what a perfect place to put a really good library, you know, because it's too far to drive to your local community college for an evening class, and a great place for gathering people together. So I'm thrilled about it. I'm just all on board with it. It's a great gift to me that you, Shannon, my old friend, have included me.
Oh, it's a great gift that you have been willing to join us. And we're going to be bringing you back certainly when your new book comes out, if not before. So, I mean, having the resident authors have to be very much front and center in this process. That's great. Well, thank you so much, Carol. It is it's if we have to see you only on video, then we're going to have you on a lot more. Otherwise, find some time for those distanced walks. But there's a comment. This is such an interesting and fabulous interview and reading. Thank you. Can't wait to read your book. So anyway, you're going to have many, many more fans, I know, that come from this, which is great. I actually don't know. People need to know that you've written a novel about this valley. I'm not sure that people actually understand that. So now they will. And that's exciting.
Well, and may I make one shout out?
Please.
Shannon, Polson, you absolutely phenomenon. Phenomenon that you have been such a spearheader of this, as well as many other community treasures in this valley. And if you would give me 10% of your energy, I would write 50 books. So, but thank you.
I want to use this energy to start doing some writing at some point, but you're very kind. It's a great team that we have, and we're very lucky for the team. And I'm absolutely flabbergasted that we are moving towards the likelihood of breaking ground soon. And it's a pretty phenomenal thing for this community, I think. So thank you, Carol, and
yes.
For everything.
Okay.
All right.
So take care.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.